By the end of this episode, you'll have 7 actionable steps that you can use to become a homeowner in 2023, 2024, or whenever you decide to buy a home. And if you don't believe a guy wearing shades indoors, I'll take these off. But also, you can check the description down below for the actual steps. You may have noticed the title of this episode lists 8 steps. So, congrats, you're already on step number 1. Let's get into it. Welcome back to House Rich, the first time homebuyer show where we help millennials figure out how in the world do I buy my first home. Today's episode is the 2023 Home Buying Manifesto. As I mentioned, you're already on step number 1. As corny as it may sound, step number 1 is to believe you can actually buy a home. So many people get denied by themselves because they never apply because they're like, oh, my credit's too bad. I have too much debt. I won't have enough money to buy a home. One, two, or three of those things may be true, but here's what happens when you actually apply for a loan. Only one of 3 things can happen. One, you get pre-approved for the amount you were looking for. Congrats. Number 2, you get pre-approved for a little bit less than you were looking for. So, sort of there. And number 3, you get declined, right? But to quote the great Sean Corey Carter III, I will not lose, for even in defeat, there's a valuable lesson learned, so it evens it up for me. So what happens when you get number 3 and you lose and you get declined, right? You get information that will help you win in the end or get pre-approved. Because if you're talking to any decent loan officer, one, by law, they have to tell you why you're declined. So there's 3 things lenders look for. There's credit, there's your income in relation to your debts, and there's funds available for the down payment. Those are the big 3 things that either you qualify for or you don't qualify for. So once you talk to a lender, they can help you formulate a plan in order to achieve all 3 of those things you need to buy a home. By the way, talking to a lender is number 8 on this list. Number 2, determine what your goals are, because that informs basically every single step after this, right? So, are you looking to buy your dream home? Believe it or not, despite what the internet tells you, you can buy a single family home. That's fine. That can be your dream home. That can be the end of it. Maybe you're further along in your life, in your career, or maybe you're just like, hey, I'm 25 years old. I just want the house with the picket fence. That is completely fine, despite the fact that the internet may tell you need to buy a duplex, triplex, fourplex, a freaking cineplex, right? I think that's a movie theater, but that's completely fine as long as that's part of your life goals for you, right? Or do you want to house hack and get that duplex, triplex, or fourplex? Do you want to buy a single family home and house hack with that single family home? Do you travel a lot? Do you want to buy a condo? Do you want to buy a tiny home? Do you want to buy a trailer and travel around the country? You can't get a mortgage for that, but what do you want to do with your life? Like, you need to figure that out because that informs every single decision from here on. And very importantly, it helps you determine like what type of loan type you want to qualify for in the first place. And it helps you set up your real estate portfolio. So let's say you want to do like the house hacking thing. So I have a more detailed video on this, but hey, when house hacking, you want to start with the largest number of units you can qualify for, which is 4 units for a commercial property. Because it's much easier to go from 4 units to a 3 units, or 4 to a 2, or 3 to a 2 than it is to go from a 2 to a 3 and the other way. That's just an underwriting guideline. There are exceptions to that rule, but it's much harder to go up than it is to go down. So that helps you set up your portfolio to begin with. And you want to know that before you ever talk to a lender or a realtor, because no matter how experienced they are, their views, their opinions is through their own lens, right? You're the only one that can make the best decision for you. So make sure that you have an idea in your head of what you want to do before you talk to any of the professionals in this manifesto. Step 3, determine what price range works for your budget. The way not to do this is to say, hey, I think I want to buy a $400,000 home. And then I'll kind of figure out what that mortgage payment is after the fact. Because here's the thing, once you decide you want a $300,000 home, you're going to talk yourself into whatever that monthly payment is, whether it works for your budget or not. And I just see so many people talk themselves into homes they really can't afford because they've already fallen in love with that neighborhood or homes that are $400,000 homes. And here's the thing, there's a difference between being able to afford something and qualify for something. So sometimes you can actually qualify for more than you can actually afford because your lender, when they're looking at your debt to income ratio, is looking at your income before taxes. Your income that you're actually able to use out in the real world, right, is your income after taxes. But here we go. I'm going to walk you through how to figure out your perfect home price. If you're listening to the podcast, I'll try to be as descriptive as possible, but you may just want to check out the video. So, first thing, just go to Google and type in mortgage calculator. You'll come upon this screen. And so, in this scenario, we're talking to somebody that's paying $2,500 a month for rent, and that's saying that, hey, I'm comfortable with making $2,500 a month mortgage payments. So, here we go. The first thing is to just kind of plug in some numbers, right? So I plugged in 275 because I know that's going to work for this scenario, but you can type in 250 and you see how the numbers change to 100 and 1,449. Let's go back to 275,000. So that gives us a monthly principal and interest payment of $1,649. So when you're doing this, you want to kind of plug in a number that's about 60 to 70% of what your actual rent payment is, because you got to factor in other things like taxes and insurance. Texas, they have super high property taxes, so that number may be a little bit less in, or that number may be 80% or 70% in your local jurisdiction, but Texas has super high property taxes, right? So we have a monthly payment of $1,649 for some reason. And so what we're going to go next is we're going to go to Realtor.com. So I just plugged in homes between 275 and 325 to see what homes look like in that price range. Because what you're kind of determining is what homes look like in that price range and also in that zip code of the area you want to look in. So I put in Dallas, Texas, right? And so I looked through a couple homes. There's one that looks nice from the outside. There's 229. There's another one that looks cool. It's got like a garage with something blue down it. You can look through the pictures on Realtor.com to say, hey, I like the interior of this home as well. You know, maybe the upgrades that have to go along with this home, but also you want to be making sure you want to live in that actual area, of course, right? And so I pulled up two homes. One for 275. And so what you want to do is go down to the property history. And when you scroll down, you'll see what the property taxes are for this property. So in this situation, the property tax on this home that's $275,000 is $6,606. And you want to pull up a couple homes to make sure that the property taxes on that particular home aren't super low, more importantly, and sometimes super high. Sometimes they can be super low because it may be an older person that's in the property and they may have some sort of tax exemption on it. It may be a disabled veteran who has like a big tax exemption on the property. So you want to look at a couple homes to make sure that you're not just looking at a property that has super low taxes and kind of average them out. And here's another property I looked at is $300,000. And the property tax on this are a little bit lower. They're $5,098. In this scenario, I'm going to play it safe and use the higher number. So we're going to use $606, right? And so in this scenario, we're going to get about $500 a month for our property tax. So let's go back to our mortgage calculator. And so we said our monthly payment, principal and interest would be about, let's say, $1,650 to make the numbers round. Let's add 500 to that. So now we're at $2,150. Once again, our budget is $2,500. So now we got to figure out what our homeowner's insurance is as well for that property. Honestly, that's kind of hard to gauge, but typically I just guess about $150 to $200 for our homeowner's insurance. So always kind of estimate high just to play it safe. So once again, we're at $2,150. And we add another $200. That takes our monthly payment up to $2,350 as far as a monthly payment. So we're still $150 below what our budget is. And so you want to be below that number that you budgeted for, because you also got to factor in stuff like, you know, maintenance. You got to factor in a kitty for like an emergency fund and other stuff when you're budgeting, which we'll talk about next. All right, step number 4, the budget. So in step 2, you determine what kind of property type works best for you. And that helps you determine what type of loan type works best for you. So let's say in step number 2, you decided, hey, I want to do this house hacking thing. So for you, the best loan program is a FHA loan because it's a 3.5% down payment, whether it's 2, 3, or 4 units, or 1 unit as well. And let's say in step number 3, excuse me, we determined that we want a home that's in like the $300,000 price range. So now we need to figure out how much money do we need to actually buy this home? So 3.5% of $300,000 is $10,500. And so the other part is figuring out what your closing costs are. So people sometimes get the horrible advice, which is, hey, save between 3 and 6% of your home price towards your closing costs. It's horrible advice because on this $300,000 home, let's say 3% is $9,000, 6% is $18,000. So that's a $9,000 delta. So if you try to save up, like you may be saving money for an additional year, you don't need to because your closing costs may be closer to 3%, right? So how in the world do you to figure out what that percentage is? Well, any loan officer worth their salt will know. I can tell you in the state of Texas, or at least in the Dallas area, it's 3.5%. So we're going to pretend we're in the Dallas area because those are the homes we actually looked up, right? And so 3.5% of $300,000, once again, is still $10,500. So we add those two numbers up, and now we know we need $21,000 in order to buy a home. So now we want to figure out, like, hey, what's our actual timeline? Like, how long do I want to wait to buy a home? Do I want to buy one this summer? Do I want to just sign a lease and I got a year to figure it out? And so let's say we have a year to figure it out. So now we want to take our budgeting spreadsheet and figure out how much we need to save a month in order to buy that home. So if we take $21,000 divided by 12, that's $1,750 as far as you need to save per month if you want to have that, if you want to have that amount of money within the next 12 months. So you're starting at zero, right? And so now you want to plug it into this your actual budgeting spreadsheet because it's going to tell you if you can actually do it, right? Because it's one thing to say, hey, I want to save $17,500, but if you're making like $50,000 or making $5,000 a month before taxes, right? You're probably making like $4,000 after tax. So you may not be able to physically save that amount of money. So it's like, hey, I need to maybe either lower my price range, I need to spread out my timeline, or I may need to maybe look at exploring some down payment assistance programs. And all down payment assistance programs are not guaranteed. So I always kind of give caution when it comes to banking on down payment assistance. But in the description down below, I have a video on how to find literally every single down payment assistance program available to you if you want to explore that time frame. So now you're just figuring out what your budget is at this point, and you want to make sure you have actual numbers in this spreadsheet. Whether you actually are buying a house or not, it's a cool idea to actually have a budget in a spreadsheet. If you don't have one, just email me at hello@houserichshow.com, and I will send you this very spreadsheet for your using pleasure. And also important in this spreadsheet, because we talked about when we're finding out our price range, which was our rent was $2,500. We want to make sure that we're actually budgeting for stuff on top of our principal, interest, tax, and insurance. Once again, like hey, let's say you don't want to mow the lawn, you want to pay somebody to do that. You want to pay somebody for pest control. You want to make sure you're factoring stuff that is outside of your budget, because that's where a lot of people get jammed up when it comes to buying home. It's like, oh, home ownership is so expensive because I didn't know I needed to do X, Y, and Z. It's because you did zero research to determine what you needed to pay for in addition to buying a home. But with this spreadsheet, it'll help you figure out what you need to do in order to buy that home. All right, step 5, let's figure out where your credit is and where your credit needs to be. So folks will tell you that Credit Karma is a horrible place to start, it's wrong, blah, blah, blah. They don't understand how credit works, which is why they say that. Credit Karma score is not wrong, it's just a different score model. It's a Vantage 3 score model. It's typically going to be about 20 to 40 points above your score, but it's a decent gauge of where your credit may be. I mean, if your Credit Karma says 580, you're not going to be able to qualify. If your Credit Karma says like 660, to me that's in kind of the danger zone, where that delta between Credit Karma and what your mortgage lender uses, which is your FICO 2, 4, and 5, FICO 2 for Equifax, FICO 4 for TransUnion, and TransUnion, and FICO 5 for Experian. That's where that delta comes into play, but it's a decent gauge on where your credit is if you don't want to pay for it. And so you can also get a copy of your credit score report at annualcreditreport.com. It won't give you your score, once again, because annualcreditreport.com doesn't know what you're using your credit report for, but it'll tell you what's in your credit report. So like, for instance, if your Credit Karma says, hey, you have a 700 credit score, and you look at your annualcreditreport.com and you see no derogatory events, your credit score probably is close to a 700 credit score. Now, if your banking app is saying, hey, you have a 700 credit score, and you see a bunch of derogatory events, Now you know, hey, okay, this credit karma score probably is wrong because this score model is not factoring in these other derogatory events for one reason or the other. But let's talk about credit. So usually you'll see the breakdown on the right, which says payment history 35%, amounts owed, utilization 30%, length of credit history 15%, new credit 10%, and types of credit 10%. But what I want you to pay attention to is the list on the left, which is how you really should look at your credit score. And so your credit score, your FICO score when it comes to getting a mortgage is made up of 850 points. However, you have 300 points just for having a credit profile for at least 6 months. So really the amount of points you can manipulate are 550 points. So now let's look at these percentage breakdowns. So we're talking about payment history, which is the most important part of your credit, which is 35%. That translates to 192.5 points. Utilization 30%, that accounts for 165 points. Length of credit history 82.5 points. Credit mix 55 points, and saving the best for last, new credit, which is 55 points. New credit are inquiries basically. Here's the thing, inquiries do not matter when it comes to getting a mortgage. No one in history of applying for a mortgage, in my 70 years of experience, has ever been denied a mortgage due to inquiries. It's not even like a line item on the application. It's not a factor, it's a non-factor when it comes to getting a mortgage. You'll see all these credit repair people running around saying, hey, inquiry repair kits and all this other stuff, because inquiries are super easy to remove. That's it, but they have very little impact on your credit score and no impact when it comes to getting a mortgage. So let's look at the 850 points, right? So you can subtract that 55 points from 850, you'll still have a 795. A perfect score when it comes to getting a mortgage is a 740. You may be thinking to yourself, how in the world could you have a 0 in the inquiry column, but still have perfect in every other column? You're right, you can't. So the reason you have a bunch of inquiries is because your payment history or your utilization probably is not the hottest, right? And so you can't get financing. So now you run around to a bunch of different lenders and get your credit pulled because lender 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, H, J, K, L, M, N, N, O, P denied you. And so you're trying to run around and find somebody that would approve you. So that's why you have like 10, 20 inquiries and you're thinking your credit is ruined because of the inquiries. No, you already have bad credit. You have the inquiries because you can't get approved because your credit is bad. And so I have a video down below in this description as well that will show you how to remove credit inquiries for free if you so want to do that, right? Don't ever pay anybody to remove inquiries, but knowing where you need to be as far as your credit is half the battle. So let's talk about what the minimum requirements are as far as credit. So for NACA, technically none, but you do need to have a history of saving and paying your bills on time when it comes to NACA. USDA and VA, technically none as well, but your lender is going to have overlays. So most likely you're going to need probably at least a 620 for either of those programs. For conventional, the minimum credit requirements are a 620 as well. And FHA, if you want to put down 10%, you can have a 500 to a 579 credit score. For 580 and above for an FHA, you need to put down 3.5% in order to meet those minimum credit requirements. So that's kind of letting you know where you need to be as far as ballpark when it comes down to figuring out your credit. So you may be wondering, how do I figure out what my exact scores are for actually applying for a mortgage? One, talk to a lender. That'll be my answer for a lot of these questions. They'll be able to tell you, because once again, don't be afraid of getting your credit pulled. It's not a big thing. An inquiry may dink you like 4 to 6 points. So in the scheme of things, that is a nothing. And also when you get your credit pulled, it's not like if you have a 700, you get your credit pulled and your lender sees a 696. No, they see the 700. Your credit score may go down 4 points the next month, but your lender is going to use that same credit score for the next 90 to 120 days. So they'll never see that 696 in the first place. And then 2, inquiries do not matter after like 2 months at all. Really, not after 1 year. It's very minimum after 3 months. Not at all after 2 months, after a year, and then they just fall off completely after 2 years. So there you go as far as figuring out where your credit is, or you can go to myfico.com and actually like pay, I think like $29 or something to figure out what your mortgage scores are. So there you go. For step number 6, we're going to step back a little bit and woosah, and let's look at the mental aspect of buying a home. Because here's the thing, home ownership is great, but those payments are coming for the next 30 years, no matter what's going on with your personal life. So let's look at your job right now. Like, are you in a stable position at your workplace? Are you on the up and up? Or are you on like strike number two? Is everything going well with your job, or are there have layoffs have come? Have they cut back on overtime? Have they cut back on bonuses? Are things not looking good at your job? Are you thinking that, hey, maybe this job is okay, but maybe I want to explore other opportunities. And I want to confine myself to Dallas, for example. Like if a good job comes up in Chicago, I want to be able to jet off of there without worrying about this property. So you need to figure out like what's going on with your job. Is your income stable? Also, like where are you at like physically? Like I'm in Dallas right now. And so if I'm like, hey, Dallas is okay, but I came down here just for a little bit. I don't really want to live here. You probably should be buying a home in a place you don't want to live as your primary residence. So it's like, hey, maybe I want to wait till I kind of get back to DC and find a job once again, or maybe my company, you're self-employed, maybe the company will operate a little bit better in DC than Dallas. You need to figure out like, hey, is this a place that Eve wants to live in the first place? And then also like what is your personal situation? Like, are you with somebody and you're thinking about, maybe moving with them? Have you talked to them about laying down roots in Dallas? Maybe they want to move back to LA. So that's something you need to figure out as well as like what's going on with your personal life as far as home ownership. Will that work for your specific scenario? Because maybe it does work now, or maybe you may need to push things off to maybe like 6 months to a year, no matter how great of a financial position you are in right now. All right, so now that we figured out we're good and ready to move forward, now we're finally step number 7. Now is we should actually talk to one of the professionals. The first one I recommend talking to is a lender. So folks say should you talk to a lender first or a realtor first? I'll give you this example. You can purchase a home without a realtor. I don't recommend it, but you can't purchase a home without money. So to me, you always want to start with the lender to make sure everything you worked on steps 1 through 6 makes sense, right? And for them to verify the work that you've done on yourself. And excuse me, don't talk to a lender, talk to lenders. This is the biggest financial decision of your life. Do not go with the first person that you talk to. Even if your friend had a great experience with that person, you still want to interview people on your own accord, because I'm sure your friend also has friends that you may not like, right? So just because they like the lender doesn't mean that that's a good lender for you or they're a fit for you. So here are some questions you should ask your lender when it comes to the qualification process. Is one, how long have you been in the business? No right or wrong answer. You want to make sure that you know what their working hours are as well. So some lenders just aren't available on the weekends. That's not a good thing. It's not a bad thing. Well, it's probably a bad thing for you because that's when you're shopping from home. But some lenders just don't work on the weekends because they're like, hey, maybe they work in a like a phone bank, so you don't have their cell phone, or maybe they're just so established. They're like, hey, I put in my 10 years. Call me Monday through Friday, 8 through 5, and that is good to go. Like I know very successful lenders that just do that. 3, you want to ask like, hey, what loan programs do you specialize in? I'll give you the example. As a lender, I've never done a USDA loan ever in my life. So if you're looking to do a USDA loan, I probably wasn't the lender for you. Would I ever tell you that? No, I would figure it out, and probably things probably would go well. But here's the thing: when it comes to experience, the guidelines are so thick. There's no way that anybody can know every single guideline. But having experience working with certain types of loans means that you have experience with the one-off situations that will come up. So you want to know what programs they specialize in, especially if you're going on one of these specialized programs like USDA or VA, or even to extent an FHA loan, because some lenders don't do FHA loans at all. If you're looking for down payment assistance programs, you may also want to ask them what down payment assistance programs are available for somebody in your situation. Not the ones that they have, but which ones are available to somebody in your situation. Because if a lender is not qualified to lend on that down payment assistance program, they're not going to tell you about it. Like that's just the truth. I mean, as a lender, I didn't volunteer information about programs that I did not have to people if they didn't ask about it. If they asked about it, I would tell them what I knew, but then to tell them to talk to an expert in that field, because I don't lend on the program, so I don't know all the guidelines. And then last but not least, you want to ask them like what their turn times are. Like, hey, how quickly can you actually close these loans? Because the market's cooled down now, but let's say, way back in the 2020s, 2021s, like you may need to close a loan in like 14 days, 21 days. Like no matter how much you like the lender, like if their organization can't close a loan in that time frame, they wouldn't be the lender for you, right? Now, last but not least, now step number 8 is when you should finally talk to a realtor. Despite all the TV shows and million dollar listings and all this, yada, 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 realtor should be the last person you talk to in this evolution. because they don't know anything about the financing. They don't know anything about your personal situation. They're just typically like big personalities, right? So as always, you want to interview your realtor as well. So here's some questions you want to ask your realtor. One, how long you been in the business? Once again, no right or wrong answer. A better question also is like, how many units do you typically sell a month? Because anybody can get a realtor's license. It's not hard. Spoiler, I'm actually in the process of getting my realtor's license as well. You just need to pay a couple $100, take a test, and that's it. That does not mean you're actually moving any units. So, like, if you've been a realtor for 5 years, but your main job is logistics or target, and you may sell like 3 or 4 homes a month when a friend needs it. Hey, that's great for you, but they're probably not tapped into the market as much as somebody that's actually moving units on a monthly basis, right? And so, on that note, you want to ask them, are they part of a team or not, right? Because once again, especially if they're part time and they have like a 9 to 5, they need to be at work. Well, if you have an off schedule where you're actually available during 9 to 5, you want to make sure they have somebody on their team that can actually show you homes when you're available. Also, you want to ask that realtor, what areas do you specialize in? Realtors will tell you every single area. If I can drive there, I can specialize in the area. But here's the thing: you may be looking at specific neighborhoods, and if realtor is specializing in a specific neighborhood, city, or something like that, you may be able to find like off-market deals with that realtor. And also, that realtor's reputation may precede them positive or negative, right? But from a positive standpoint, let's say that you have two similar offers. Somebody may say, "Hey, um, Janet. Okay, this is an offer from Janet. I know Janet solid. She always has great communication as a realtor. Her clients are always very well qualified. And I know if she tells me something will happen, it'll happen. And more importantly, if I know if she tells me something's going awry, she won't BS me. And she'll let me know when things aren't going well. So I'll trust Janet. So these two equivalent offers, from one from Janet, one from Ricky, I'm going to take the offer from Janet because I know Janet is a woman of her word, right? Also, you want to kind of make sure you like the person, right? Because you're going to be spending a lot of time with this person, way more time than your lender. You're probably going to be spending hours on the weekends driving around. You may be driving around in the same car. So you're spending a lot of time with this person. You need to make sure that there's somebody that you like. That's it. Congrats to you for investing in yourself. Here's another gift. If you have a questions about anything in this episode, just email me using my email in the description. But in the title of the email, put the number 8 so I know that you watched to the end. And also, as a wink, wink, drop a green apple in the comments as well so I know who actually watched to the end. And share with a friend. And as always, buy land. Rumor has it they're not making any more of it.